Valerie, why are you sitting there? I don't remember inviting you, she sneered when she spotted me at Madeline's wedding, her voice dripping with disdain. Madeline's next words cut deep. Get out of here, you unemployed loser. You're just here to embarrass me. Her cruelty shattered any lingering goodwill I had harbored for her. Defeated, I muttered, Fine, I'll stay out of your life, and quietly excited. As I left, a sudden commotion erupted, drowning out Madeline's cries for help. Leaving the venue, I walked alongside Conrad, my husband whom I'd married a few years ago. I'm Valerie, a freelance illustrator. I began, recounting my current circumstances. Conrad, often away for work, was my pillar of support. Then, life threw a curveball. News arrived that my mother had fallen down the stairs back home, fracturing her leg. While not life-threatening, she needed care during her recovery. The looming question remained, who would be there to provide it? Dad had recently injured his back and relied on a walking stick, leaving him unable to assist Mom. I initially hoped my sister Madeline, who still lived at home, could pitch in while I offered weekend support. However, Madeline dismissed Mom's injury, insisting it's just a fracture she can manage on her own. Her indifference and frequent insensitive remarks made me doubt her reliability in caring for Mom. Eventually, I made the decision to move back home to take care of Mom while Conrad was away. While my parents welcomed my return, Madeline did not share their enthusiasm. Why are you back? You're in the way, she grumbled whenever our paths crossed in the kitchen or living room. Whether out of long-standing animosity or jealousy, her hostility made living under the same roof challenging, prompting me to avoid confrontation with her. Despite my efforts to focus on caring for Mom, Madeline continued to antagonize me. I took on Mom's household responsibilities, enduring Madeline's criticisms of my cooking and even finding laundry strewn in my room on occasion. Though her actions were immature, I chose not to engage. 2 weeks after my return, a knock interrupted my thoughts, prompting me to open the door, curious about Madeline's sudden visit. Are you ever going to work? All you do is stay home, aside from shopping or going to the hospital. You're not even working, are you? She accused. I tried to explain that I work as a freelance illustrator for my laptop, but she didn't understand. So you sit there drawing pictures on your laptop and expect that to count as a job? That's no different from being unemployed and holed up at home. Having someone like you in the house is the worst, she retorted angrily before storming off to her room, her footsteps echoing her frustration. A few days later, Madeline announced, I want you to meet someone. Wait in the living room. We followed her instructions, and soon she returned with a tall, slender man whose hopeful expression seemed highlighted by the mole under his left eye. Nice to meet you all. I'm Rodney, Madeline's fiancé. Thank you for having me here today. He greeted us warmly, extending his hand for a handshake. Surprised by the unexpected visitor, my parents and I exchanged greetings with him, unsure of what to make of this introduction. Nice to meet you, we greeted Rodney, taken aback by the revelation that Madeline had a fiancé, a surprise to both us and our parents. As they began sharing their story, we exchanged puzzled glances. I met Rodney at work. He's incredibly sincere, capable, and wonderful, Madeline gushed with admiration. Don't flatter me too much, Rodney chuckled, clearly enjoying the attention. They laughed and reminisced about their first meeting, what drew them to each other, and their future plans together. Rodney spoke fondly of Madeline's outgoing personality, which struck me as odd since the Madeline I knew was often rebellious, self-centered, and lacked empathy. It was hard to reconcile this description with the sister I grew up with. I really want to marry him. Please give us your blessing, Madeline implored our parents, her eyes earnest. From my perspective, Rodney seemed too good for Madeline, and I had no objections to their union. Surprisingly, my parents shared the sentiment. Though caught off guard by the news, they smiled warmly and offered their blessings for the marriage. After Rodney left, while tidying up the tea and snacks, Madeline confronted me. Jealous, aren't you, Valerie? Jealous of what? I'm marrying a wonderful, good-looking, high-earning man, something you could never pull off, she taunted with a smug smile. I met her gaze calmly. I'm not jealous. I'm genuinely happy you found someone so wonderful, I replied evenly. Her smile faltered, clearly not expecting such a response. She sighed dramatically, her tone dripping with condescension. The snacks you served Rodney were so cheap. Couldn't you have prepared something more upscale? But I guess being unemployed, you can't afford it. If I had known you were bringing your fiancé, I would have arranged something appropriate. You really should have picked up on my happy vibe lately. I hate how you can't read a room. As I looked at Madeline, I couldn't help but wonder how sustainable her marriage would be. That night, I felt concerned for Rodney. I reached out to Conrad as I often did when feeling lonely. His voice on the other end of the line was a comforting routine, helping me through the emotional weight of the situation. I told him about Madeline bringing her fiancé. Wow, Madeline has a fiancé. That's great news. Yes, his name is Rodney Bland. He seems too good for her. As soon as I mentioned that, Conrad's demeanor shifted. Wait, did you say Rodney Bland? Yes, why? What's wrong? Conrad's voice turned grave as he accurately described Rodney's appearance, mannerisms, and the distinctive mole under his left eye. Stunned, I asked, "Are you serious?" "Valerie, you need to tell Madeline to reconsider marrying Rodney. He's a scam artist." My heart sank. What? Are you sure? Rodney used to work for me. He left years ago after we discovered he was scamming multiple women out of their money and disappearing. I've been trying to track him down ever since. I stopped short of contacting the victims directly. We need to be absolutely sure it's him. Get a photo of Rodney from Madeline, and let's verify. Okay, I agreed, feeling a mix of disbelief and urgency. The next day, I approached Madeline under the guise of wanting a photo of Rodney to draw a caricature for their welcome board. She grumbled but reluctantly handed over the photo. When Conrad saw it, his expression hardened. That's definitely him, Rodney the scam artist. You need to convince her to reconsider before she loses any money, Conrad urged. I was planning to do that anyway. Despite our differences, I want Madeline to be happy, I affirmed, feeling the weight of responsibility as her older sister. I wasted no time in confronting Madeline with the truth about Rodney. She scoffed in disbelief. You're just jealous and trying to ruin my fiancé's reputation. I'm not. Connor told me everything. Please, Madeline, reconsider. You deserve better, I pleaded earnestly. I persisted in my efforts to persuade her daily, but each attempt only fueled her anger. She refused to listen, and her animosity towards me grew. I even enlisted our parents to reason with her, but when Madeline realized it was at my behest, her hostility intensified. She began to harass me openly, bursting into my room to berate me for being unemployed or banging on my door to disrupt my work. Despite neighbors' complaints, their hostility towards me persisted unchecked. I had reached the end of my patience and goodwill as her sister. While some might argue, she's your only sister, you should keep trying. There's a limit to what I can do for someone who refuses to listen and continually harasses me. I resigned myself to seeking advice from Conrad and my parents on how to proceed. On the day of the wedding, I arrived with a modest wedding gift and entered the opulent venue. The setting was grand, the food lavish, and Madeline's friends and relatives were already immersed in the celebration. As I observed the sumptuous spread being served, I noticed something unsettling. No drinks had been offered to me while my parents were enjoying a full-course meal nearby. When I queried the staff, they promised to check on it and disappeared. Moments later, Madeline, resplendent in a pristine white wedding gown, approached me, the click of her heels echoing in the grand hall. Valerie, why are you sitting there? I don't recall inviting you, she remarked coldly. Not just myself, but also my parents, the guests, and even the staff turned towards Madeline in astonishment. The lively venue, alive with chatter just moments ago, fell into an eerie silence, punctuated by hushed murmurs. Despite being the focal point of this negative attention, Madeline regarded me with a smug expression. You have the nerve to show up here after insulting my fiancé? Unbelievable. Oh, but I guess being unemployed means you don't understand basic manners, she sneered. My parents, standing beside me, intervened. Madeline, stop this. It's your wedding day. Ignoring their pleas, Madeline persisted. How can I enjoy my wedding if people know my sister is unemployed? Just leave, you're embarrassing me. With a heavy sigh, I rose from my seat. After sharing a concerned glance with my parents, I met Madeline's gaze squarely. I came here to celebrate your wedding as your sister, but clearly you don't want that, I said, feeling the weight of her words. It's a shame. Who wouldn't want to be supported by someone who's unemployed like me? Fine then. I'm leaving. One more thing. Are you absolutely sure you won't regret this if I walk out that door? Because if I do, it might be the end of our sisterhood. Perfect, she responded, cutting me off. Just go. It's better this way. Any remaining affection and health for her vanished in that moment. Fine, I told Madeline firmly. Consider us done. Don't contact me again. As I walked away, I could hear Madeline arguing with her parents behind me, but it was no longer my concern. Pulling out my phone, I dialed Conrad's number. You can come in now, I said quietly. There's no need to wait any longer. Understood, Conrad replied, his voice steady as he relayed the message. Moments later, a group of women who had been waiting outside rushed into the venue. Get him, Rodney. Don't let him get away. Outside, the echoes of angry shouts and gasps from the surprised guests reached me. Moments later, the door burst open, and Rodney, the groom, dashed out, his face drenched in sweat. He attempted to flee, but Conrad, strategically positioned nearby, swiftly apprehended him. Got you, Rodney. You're not going anywhere, Conrad declared firmly. Conrad, what the hell? Madeline's furious voice cut through the commotion as she and a group of women hurried over to confront the bewildered Rodney. Are you trying to ruin our wedding? Get away from me, Conrad. Madeline lashed out, lunging at him, but I intervened, grabbing her arm to restrain her. Startled at first, Madeline's expression quickly twisted into rage as she turned on me, seizing my collar. This is your doing, isn't it? You're despicable. How many times did I warn you to stay out of my business, especially about Rodney? As I spoke, I turned towards Rodney and gestured towards the group of women surrounding him. Rodney here has been dating these women and scamming them out of their money. They're planning to take legal action against him. What? Are you kidding me? This isn't a joke, Madeline, I said sternly, looking at Rodney, who avoided eye contact, clearly uneasy. Madeline, stunned, muttered, Rodney, you can't be serious. Rodney, visibly shaken, looked down and attempted a smile as he addressed the women around him. Why bother with lawsuits? Let's settle this. I'm about to marry a wealthy woman. I can compensate you, right? Me? Wealthy? Madeline trembled as she spoke. I don't have that kind of money. What? What? I lied about being wealthy, so I can't pay any settlement or damages. What then? What about the $20,000 you've been giving me? That was for our wedding. You said to trust you with it, so I did. You didn't spend it all, did you? Madeline demanded incredulously. I blew through that $20,000 in a day, Rodney admitted with a nonchalant shrug. What? Are you serious? Give it back, my $20,000. Madeline's voice cracked with anger and betrayal. The exchange left everyone present dumbfounded. Rodney, exposed as a scammer who exploited women for money, and Madeline, revealed to have deceived about her wealth to secure their marriage. It was a surreal match indeed. The guests who had gathered due to the commotion reacted with whispers and wide-eyed disbelief. After a heated argument with Rodney, Madeline noticed the attention and erupted in frustration. What are you all staring at? Get out. The wedding is over. Just leave your gifts and go, she commanded, motioning for the staff to escort the guests out. Then, in a sudden change of direction, she rushed over to me. Valerie, you were right. If only I had listened to you, none of this would have happened. I'm sorry. Please help me, Madeline pleaded, her tone more desperate than sincere. But her words rang hollow, and Conrad, standing beside me, silently shook his head. I nodded in agreement, pulling away from her touch. I told you, we're done. We're strangers now. I won't help you, I asserted firmly. What? How can you say that, Valerie? You're abandoning your own sister, Madeline protested, her voice tinged with disbelief and desperation. I don't have a sister anymore. Goodbye, Madeline. Let's never cross paths again, I replied, turning away from her. Wait, Valerie, please. Ignoring her cries, Conrad and I left the venue. Later, through my parents, I learned about Madeline and Rodney's fate. Madeline was disowned and expelled from the family home, forced to move in with Rodney due to their legal marriage. Rodney faced lawsuits from the women he had deceived, leading him to take out loans to settle the debts. The strain of financial ruin ultimately shattered their marriage, ending in divorce. Now both destitute, their once promising union had crumbled. About 6 months after Madeline's ill-fated wedding, my mother's fracture healed, and life resumed its usual pace. My temporary assignment concluded, and I returned home, visiting my parents periodically. A year later, Conrad and I welcomed our first child, blessed with the support of our loving families.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1, if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike. What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.